Again. This coming Shabbat, that's the Shabbat of the 9 days, the Shabbat just before Tisha B'Av, has the name Shabbat Chazon, Shabbat of vision. And I'd like to explore and dig a little bit deeper into what vision really is all about. So it's a Shabbat in the middle of a very dark period, and actually a very interesting insight into this is given to us by the Apter Rebbe, Apter Rov, as he was known, who tells us that Shabbat Chazon is actually a happy Shabbat, happier than any other Shabbat of the year. Now, the contrast, of course, is that um, you know, the light always shines in the darkness. So you appreciate the joy of Shabbos and the happiness of Shabbos when we going through a period, of mourning. But it's more than that. There's something inherently um, joy and special about this Shabbos called Shabbat Chazon. And what this is introduced to us by the Berditchever Rov, who tells us that every person is shown a vision of the third temple. And while we're shown this vision, we're shown this vision to long for it. So we change our actions and we behave in a way that brings us closer to the rebuilding of the third temple. And famously, the Berditchev Rov tells us about the parable of the garment, well-known mashal, of a king or father who gave, parables always are kings. So the king or father gave his child a special dear garment, suit. He said to him, look after this, be very careful with this. The child doesn't know how to look after it properly, and he goes and plays soccer with his friends out in the courtyard on Shabbos afternoon. And the next thing, there's holes in the elbows and holes in on the knees, and it's all dirty and it has to be thrown away. But the father really wants his kid to have a suit, and so he goes and buys him a second suit and puts it on and says, "But look, this time, you messed up first time around. This time you're going to look after it." And the child, puts on the suit. He's sitting in shul with his father, looks out the window. He sees the kids playing with marbles out in the courtyard, and out he is, and the next thing the suit is pulled once again. So the father doesn't just say, "Look, you're not getting suits anymore." The father buys him a third suit, hangs it in the cupboard, and from time to time, the father opens up the cupboard, and he says, "You see this suit? When you grow up and you know how to look after things, I'm going to give it to you. But right now, you're not ready." So if you think back, we had a first temple. Uh, yeah, we went to play soccer in the mud, and we lost it. We had a second temple, and went and played marbles in the shul courtyard, and it was spoiled once again. And now we're shown a vision of the third temple. And that vision is supposed to inspire us to long for its rebuilding. The question is, do we experience this? I mean, yeah, we're being shown the Beit HaMikdash. It's a chazon, means a Shabbat of vision. So the vision is not just the vision of Isaiah as in the Haftarah, but also that visualizing with the temple. So I don't know, we've had Shabbat chazons before. Ask yourself an honest question: did you see the third temple? Did you actually appreciate that vision? So let's explore a little bit what seeing is and different dimensions of seeing, and we'll understand what it means to see, a third temple. There's an ancient Kabbalah book called Sefer Yetzirah, literally translated as the Book of Creation. And Sefer Yetzirah expounds on the idea that every month of the 12 months in our calendar is connected with a power. And the month of Tammuz, which actually came to an end yesterday, so that's the month that we use to prepare for this Shabbat of vision. That is dealing with the spiritual power of sight. Um, so when I asked the question, and that's going to introduce the idea of sight, but when did man first begin to see? We would assume that Adam and Eve were created in the Garden of Eden on day one of what we call creation of man, and day six of the cycle of creation. And man and woman were created with sight. I mean, they weren't created, handicapped, they were created sighted people. But in fact, just a couple of paragraphs down, suddenly we discover that they got eyesight, right? It's after the um, sin of the fruit which they consumed, and it says, "Vatipakachna enei shnehem." Their eyes opened up, and then they knew that they were naked, and so suddenly, they opened up their eyes and they could see. What does it say? They knew that they were naked. It should have been. I mean, the verse should read, "They saw that they were naked." So there were different levels of sight, and the original level of sight that they were given in the Garden of Eden initially. That was one of spiritual sight. When you looked at things, you saw the inner core, the deeper significance. When Adam looked at Eve, he saw not a physical object, not a physical being, he saw a spiritual creature, a soul. But then they fell from grace, so to speak. They fell to a lower level of human beings, and as such, their eyesight not deteriorated, but shifted to seeing the physical. Now, if you're looking at a soul, then the body is just a shell, and there's really no shame. But suddenly, you're not looking at things with physical eyes. You're not looking at the inner core, the soul, but you're looking at the body. And suddenly, there's this whole new dimension of no, we got to cover up because this is not a decent way of walking around, and this is provocative and it's incorrect, and so forth. So, there is um, physical side, there's spiritual side. And this explains this verse that we're very familiar with because we say it in the Shema, chapter 3, sorry, paragraph 3 of the Shema. So it's said every single day, so twice a day. And we say in the third paragraph, Lo taturu acharei lavchem v'acharei einechem. Do not wander after your hearts and after your eyes. Really, it's the other way. Really, it's you see something and then your heart lusts, your heart desires, your heart wants. You see your neighbor's car, and you suddenly want to have, that latest model SUV, whatever it is. So it should be. Do not wander after your eyes and after your hearts, because your eyes are going to lead you astray, and they're going to make you want things that you shouldn't want. That will bring out the worst in you, whatever it may be. But in truth, it's the reverse. The heart wants, and then the eyes see. If the heart doesn't want, you don't notice it. But if your heart wants the latest model car, then suddenly you notice that your neighbor has got that vehicle. But if you're not longing after physical possessions like cars, then what your neighbor has doesn't make a difference to you. And a simple example, okay, if you decide that you want to buy a red car, then every single red car in the street is going to draw your attention. If you decide that you want to buy a particular model of, whatever it is, the latest Toyota model, the Cross, what do they call it, hybrid model, and you start seeing those everywhere and saying, "I really want it." In the same way, if you want to see the positive in another person, your eyes will naturally begin to notice their good qualities. If you are looking to see the bad in others, if you're cynical in your approach, then you're going to see the bad in others. That's the sad reality. So yeah, this is wandering, lusting after your heart and then your eyes. Now, understanding this concept of spiritual eyesight versus physical eyesight. Um, this is well, going in the wrong direction. Okay. This is Psalm 79. Mizmor Asaf, um, a song of Asaph. Elokim ba'u goim benachalatecha, God, uh, strangers, nations entered into your inheritance. And it's a description of of the destruction of the temple. What is this Mizmor Asaf? Mizmor, a song. We're talking about destruction of the Beit Hamikdash, and the word mizmor, zemer, singing, it should be a lament, kina asaf, or bechi asaf. Bechi is crying. Wa mizmor. So the Medrash answers this as follows: We thank Hashem because he poured his anger on his wrath on wood and stones, the physical building, rather than destroying his beloved children. Shafach kamato al eitzim va'avanim, is how the Medrash puts it. So what happened? I mean, why would the physical structure of the temple have to be destroyed? The wood and the stones did sin. The Jews were in the wrong, it seems. What was their mistake? At the beginning, building of the temple, when the Jewish people came in, they looked at it with the deeper level of eyesight. So what did they see? They came in and they saw a place of spiritual beauty, not physical beauty. They saw a place of revelation of godliness. They witnessed, as Pirkei Avot said, 10 ongoing miracles that happened every day in the temple. As I like to say, the temple was where they came, up close and personal with Hashem. It was physical eyesight, but it was actually spiritual eyesight. You saw godliness in the temple. With time, the temple became a mere sanctuary structure, a temple of beauty, which it was. When the Jews came in, they said, "Wow, this temple built with such elegance, with such magnificence. This temple, um, we see gold and fancy woods, and it's all been put together in such. So they see there was instead of like Adam and Eve, instead of seeing the inner beauty that lay in the temple, they failed, and they were seeing the physical. Hashem said, "V'asudi mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham." Make me a sanctuary. I will dwell within them. And them, we're saying that's not within the sanctuary, but within every single Jew. But they were not able to um, see that, and they were looking at the structure and not the actual very interesting, the actual inner core. Very interesting historical point. It's in the Torah. When they traveled in the desert, so they had to move the entire temple structure, was then smaller, and it was a tabernacle from one place to another. So how did they do this? They had to take it apart, and there were Leviim who carried it. But before the Leviim were allowed to approach, the Kohanim covered the holy vessels. So the essential vessels, particularly the Holy Ark, had special coverings, as did all the other vessels. And so when it was carried, it wasn't visible, it was obscured. And that was the message. This is not about um, the physical structure and the physical beauty of it, but there's something hidden. There's something deeper here. The Zohar makes an amazing point, difficult to understand. But the Zohar says, if you close your eyes, you begin to see spiritual colors that shine. If you close your eyes, you begin to see spiritual colors that shine. What does it mean? Well, you close your physical eyes and you start looking at something at a deeper level. There's a museum in Holon, quite near the airport in central Israel. It's called Dialogue in the Dark. It's an amazing place. I mean, if you're ever in Israel, do yourself a favor and go, go there for a couple of hours. It's an amazing experience. You actually asked, there's also a deaf museum, and there's also an old museum. It's actually a children's museum, but they're great for all of us. And it's about experiencing what it would be like, God forbid, to be to to be deaf, and for about half an hour, 45 minutes, you walk around in total silence. You're only allowed to communicate non-verbally, and they so you experience different ways of communication. There's also the old museum, where the challenges that people of a certain age have, like sitting down from a low couch or going up a steep staircase, etc. So everything, all those challenges are being created. I never visited it. Like one of the guides told me that he was uh, very surprised that when he took kids to the old museum, they cried. They didn't cry in the blind museum and in the deaf museum, and he couldn't understand why. And I said to him, it's very simple. Every single day, a child prays that he should keep his eyesight, that he shouldn't lose his hearing, and that he should get old. And suddenly he goes into the old museum and he realizes, well, it's not a bed of roses, Their challenges in aging. Obviously, the alternative is worse. But we do pray, to get old, and we do hope that it's not going to be met with challenges. But coming back to the Blind Museum, Dialogue in the Dark, for about 45 minutes, you walk around in pitch darkness. There's nothing, and you go from one exhibit to the next. You get to experience a world without eyesight. It's an amazing experience, and in one of them, there's music playing, and you appreciate the music. I mean, you can go to a concert and there's a performer and the artist, and then there's the slideshows and the lights and everything. Here it's pure music. You're not distracted by anything. Even if you go to a classical music concert, you still there's a show. There's a conductor who is performing with his arms, and you start enjoying the experience, but also in a visual way. But you can't really concentrate on music purely. You go from room to room, really experiencing a world of darkness, and all your other senses become more acute. And I've taken groups there, and suddenly you kind of recognize people by they smell the aftershave, and you know who's who because if you chatted to them in the dark, but suddenly who are you? You recognize their voice, you recognize maybe the feel of the outer garment because you bumped into them. It's a different world, but it's a deeper world. Where there's a greater appreciation for things that normally physical sight doesn't allow you to be. And then in the final room, you sit down. It's kind of, I don't know exactly how it's shaped because I just was in my chair. But the guide tells his story and they're all blind guides, of how he lost his eyesight and how traumatic it was, and how he discovered a different world without having physical eyesight. And then you walk out and you see this person. And in truth, if I'd met this person, in real life, I probably would have kind of moved away because that's a physical, immediate kind of gut reaction. People look different, and we're not comfortable. And then, but here, suddenly, I'd appreciate it because I had a dialogue with this fellow in the dark. Um, the true essence of this individual, not just this external and physical, sorry, appearance. So this is now about changing your perspective. Two people can grow up in the same home, and have exactly the same amenities, facilities, food, etc. And the one will say, I grew up in a home of deprivation, of poverty, and the other will say, no, it was a warm home, it was great, and we thrived. The difference is perspective. They talk about the optimist and the pessimist. Yeah. So we normally say that the pessimist looks at the glass as half empty, and the optimist looks at it as half full. But the real optimist reframes, takes a smaller glass, pours the water in, and he's got a completely full glass. Um, it's about reframing. It's about looking at things in a different way. And we tend to get sometimes very unhappy about the world we live in. And we think, well, I'll be happy if I could change the circumstances. If only I had more money. If only I had a better house. If only I had a better job. I wasn't so frustrated. And we always want to blame um, our unhappiness on circumstances instead of saying, let me look at the deeper reality here. Is it um, a blessing that I'm experiencing, or is it a curse that I'm experiencing? Um, it's about it's about changing the way you look at things. Nedbank came up with this logos, what, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, see money differently. It's very powerful. I don't think they mean what I mean when I put this on a screen, see money differently. And I don't know if they model this, but this is Barclays Bank campaign, big picture banking, see things differently. So even deeper, look at the world in a different way. I'm going to share a personal story, but I went, it was a bitter July winter night. I went to visit somebody at Sandringham Gardens and the old age home. As I walked in, there was a woman in the lobby, and the guard was kind of gesticulating to me as security to help him. She was in kind of a very flimsy nightdress, and she was leaving. And he was afraid to open the door for me because she would slip out. So he kind of motioned. And he said, I've got to get out of this terrible place. I've got to leave. I've got to get out of this terrible place. And I said to her, no, I've got to go home. And I tried to convince her, and I even showed her the list of residents. And I offered to take her back to her, her room. And she was very skeptical. I just eventually kind of, gave up. And then I went to visit the gentleman I was visiting. On the way out, I was sitting and was actually picking up my daughter from a math lesson. Oh, this goes way back, which was very near there, but the lesson wasn't over. So I sat down on one of the couches in the lobby, and I'm watching two ladies, two residents walk back in, and they're talking to each other. The conversation goes like this. Oh, so good to be home. I mean, it was dreadful. It was nice to play poker with friends, but the house was freezing, and I couldn't wait to get back home to this beautiful place. And I thought to myself, same place, different perspectives. The one's wanting to run away, and the other one is longing to come back. And this is how we have to reframe. So there's a powerful verse. It's in the Psalm of Ashrei. So it's also said every single day. Um, but I don't have it. We say, sorry, I thought it was in the slide. We say, yeah, it's gone. Einecho elecha yesaberu. We say, the eyes of everyone look your way. And you give them the food in the proper time. So there's something about changing our perspective of how we view ourselves, and suddenly stopping and saying, how is God looking at us? How's Hashem viewing us? And it changes that perspective. And we want blessing. We want to be, we want to create channels for blessing. We want to change the way that that we see ourselves in the way that God sees us. I mean, powerful exercise is to sit down and write a letter from God to me. Yeah, where the letter reads, Dear Yossi Chaikin, I think you are, etc., etc., would love Hashem. And think of how Hashem would write a letter to you and really see your true qualities. And you create a channel of connection with Hashem. We start our day with Moderni. What's Moderni? Moderni is about making that decision as you wake up. I am going to have a day in which I'm connected with Hashem. That's what we do. We connect. First thought is, thank you, Hashem, for restoring my soul. Today, I will um, I will connect with you. And for the rest of the day, instead of looking at all the obstacles that come in our way, I'm going to see all those obstacles as opportunities. The beginning of the parasha of Re'eh, we're going to read this in about 3 weeks. Behold, a place before you today, a blessing and a curse. So life is in front of you. It's not a blessing, and a curse, or it's a blessing or a curse. It's I give you life, I give you circumstances, and you decide whether those circumstances are blessing or curse. It's a question of perspective and how we look at things. So it's about, as the Zohar says, closing eyes and suddenly seeing a different reality in front of you. So there are four times in kind of Jewish spiritual life where we close our eyes, so to speak, and it's to force us to look at a deeper reality, to see things differently. During the reading of the Shema, we cover our eyes. Covering our eyes is about removing all physical distractions and concentrating completely on Hashem. It's more than that. It's about changing the way we look at the world. We're not looking at the world with eyes wide open in the physical sense. We're closing eyes because we want to see the scintillating colors that the Zohar describes. So that's a daily kind of mini meditation reflection on looking beyond the, what the eyes see under the chuppah. Look at videos of secular weddings, and the bride and groom are gazing at each other, looking at each other. But what are they seeing? They're seeing a physical reality. That's how Chosn and Kala, when the groom eventually unveils the bride and they look at each other, but they're seeing a physical. During the actual betrothal of the marriage, the bride is covered. They don't see one another, so they're both looking at the rabbi in front of them who's making the brachas and so forth. They don't look at each other because what they're supposed to see under the chuppah is not the physical appearance of the chosn and the kala. That what they need to see is, I'm looking at something deeper. There's a soul and there's a bond, and I'm connecting with the other half of my soul. And I was separated from him for so long, and now we won once again. So that's the bond of marriage is built on that neshama connection. And the other opportunity for covering eyes is Shabbos candles. So a woman covers her eyes when she's lit the candles. I don't know what this is about, but then she covers her eyes. And what does that symbolize? It's about shutting out physical light and looking at the world for those few moments when she's praying. Just at the deeper dimension of Shabbos. It's been a rough day. It's been about cooking and stepping and cleaning and getting the house ready and getting the table ready. But there's more to it than that. Now we got to look at the spiritual inner dimension of Shabbos, and beyond that, it's also a time for reflecting and praying and thinking about the things that are important in life. And it's important at that point to shut the physical eyes and take your eyesight into a deeper level. And then there's the blessing of Birkat Kohanim. Now, it's a strange one. We actually spoke about this not that long ago. What is it? The Kohanim look at the congregation and say, he deserves blessing, he deserves blessing. This guy has been in shul since last Yom Kippur. Why am I blessing him? He just arrived over here half an hour ago, and he came for Yiska and he's somehow still here. That's how the Kohen could be looking at somebody in the community. This guy, he swindled, and this guy, blasphemed, and this guy, etc. We look, as recipients of the blessing, at these people standing on a platform and we're saying, he is blessing me. Do you know what his lifestyle is like? And now he stands up over there and he says to me, "Recha Hashem Yishmerecha, be blessed." So what do? The Kohanim cover their faces with the talis. We cover our faces with the talis, and that's soul to soul. Um, the Kohanim look at us and they're not seeing our bodies and our lives, they're seeing the neshamas. And we look at the Kohanim, we don't see them as individuals, human beings. We see them as as agents of Hashem, who have been chosen by God simply because through their soul to be the ones that are blessing us. And it's a powerful mind shift, that covering, of the face during Duchening. And that's about, Shabbat Chazon. What do we do Shabbat Chazon? We start looking at the world differently, not um, at the physical world as it is now, not at this exile world as it is now, but we close our eyes, we try to imagine a Beit HaMikdash, a spiritual world, a world filled with godliness. It's filled with godliness, it's exile, it's obscured. That's the kind of vision that we have to develop on Shabbat Chazon. So we've had a month to work on the gift of sight, and I all wish you good luck this coming Shabbos, doing the best you can to develop a better and deeper outlook into the physical world we inhabit. Um, so we're not going to share next Wednesday night because it's the fast. But I wish you Shabbat Shalom. Sorry, yeah, an easy fast and all good things.
Thank you, Rabbi.